Well, hi everybody, I'm John Ritland and it's Retro Review time. Here's WCW Sold Out 2000. I love what I'm doing, really, I do, honestly. I love wrestling both good and bad, and holy shit, this pay-per-view was bad. The sad thing is, it's not even close to the worst thing that WCW did in 2000, and if you missed the channel update podcast, I will be doing retro reviews of 1990 WCW pay-per-views and possibly some clashes. 1995, same thing, but mostly just the pay-per-views. But I'm for sure gonna do reviews of every single one of the 2000 pay-per-views on the WWE network. Why? Because I have to remind myself that there was some really, really bad times during the Monday Night Wars. It just good fucking God. This pay-per-view was a mess. Outside of the main event and maybe one other match, this pay-per-view was fucking horrendous. Kevin Sullivan was booking at the time, and you could tell that no matter who was booking, the AOL Time Warner merger was just going to be the death of WCW, and it pretty much was. I mean, it was after like a year and 2 more months after this, but this pay-per-view is horrendous. It was a mess. They were trying to do some new things, push some new talents, but just so many of the matches either had sloppy finishes, non-finishes, bullshit, just good fucking God. We had a much smaller stage and everything. They were kind of doing cost cutting as far as like the stages looked, and they had 14,000 people in the arena apparently. I don't know how many paid, but yeah, because WCW is spiraling the fuck out of control at this point. Tony Schiavone, Bobby Heenan, and Mike Tenay addressed the issues with Jeff Jarrett and Bret Hart both being out due to concussions, so matches were changed on the card. And then we get Kidman getting a lot of pyro for this first match. This was the first of 3 in the triple, threat theater, matches. It was Kidman having to win 3 matches to get a shot at the U.S. title. I have no problem with them trying to push new talent, but it was weird how they suddenly just decided, hey, we're going to strap the rocket to Kidman, who was a hell of a cruiserweight wrestler and deserved more than he got, but man, the way they went about this, it just did not work at all, as good as Kidman was in the ring. So we have Billy Kidman versus Dean Malenko. It's a catch-as-catch-can match. You can't leave the ring or you forfeit the match. Well, Dean Malenko leaves the ring after about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, just getting out to get a breather, and oh wait, he loses the match. And even Charles Robinson was all confused and everything. That's literally where this was. There was a little bit of good wrestling, and that was it. That was it. That's how the first match went. It's great they didn't overextend Billy Kidman and, had him pace himself in matches. But good God, this made Dean Malenko look ridiculous. By the way, this was the infamous pay-per-view where right afterwards, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, Perry Saturn, and Chris Benoit all left and went to WWE. So they lost 4 pretty premier talents. Maybe, some of them wouldn't have been top of the card. Malenko and Saturn certainly wouldn't have been top of the card, as good as they were in the ring, do not get me wrong. But fucking hell, losing Eddie and Chris was definitely, 2 big blows. So then we have recaps of the whole Vampiro, Crowbar, David Flair, and Daphne thing. I always fancied Daphne and thought that Daphne was a pretty cool character. Hey, at least she was somebody different and she added something unique to WCW. I also wish an Impact would have used her a little bit better. So, Vampiro interview. Suddenly, Masahiro Chono shows up and just starts shouting. Talking about the accolades, I assume, from, New Japan and stuff like that. I love Chono, but it was just so random. I mean, but then again, WCW and New Japan still had a working relationship at this point. Great Muta would even appear on WCW programming in 2000. So we get David Flair, Crowbar, and Daphne talking about picking bones. Yep, Daphne talking about, picking bones. I'm just going to let that hang there for a second because you all know what, I could be thinking and what some of you could be thinking. At least David Flair was more in his element, acting like a crazy guy. He was never really allowed to work and do much of anything like, be like trained to be much of a wrestler. He was just trained to be basically like, a practice dummy and just get beat up. So at least him playing a crazy character, it wasn't great, but it was better than what they were doing with him earlier in the year. Well, earlier in 99, that is. So we get Vampiro versus David Flair versus Crowbar, and they were, by the way, the tag champs at the time. Not Vampiro, but Crowbar and David Flair. Crowbar, hell of a worker. Wish he would have gotten more attention, on a mainstream basis. Daphne was also there. Match was a mess. It was a mess. Outside of the big superplex spot where Vampiro hit, it on the Crowbar, and fucking hell, Crowbar kind of flew. I was really worried about that. There was a bad botch on an attempted X Factor. Crowbar and Flair just kept stopping pinfalls and stuff like that. Daphne seemed like she was excited to get attacked by Vampiro, and then suddenly nail in the coffin pins David Flair. Cool, okay. We got through like the first 5 matches within an hour. By the way, the announcers killed time for about the first 5 minutes, and then we started the pay-per-view. So we started with 5 minutes of talking basically before we get to a show that people had paid money for. Now, yes, this is in 2000 where I think pay-per-views were between $29.95, maybe $34.95, and that might even be a little bit generous, but fucking hell, they were really asking a lot of the customers to put up with a bunch of talking they usually got on Nitro or Thunder. Yes, Thunder still existed in 2000, and guess what episode I'm going to be reviewing from Thunder later in the year? April 26, 2000, where they gave the title to David Arquette, and nothing against David Arquette, but I'm going to rail against that decision. All due respect to David Arquette, who did everything he could to quell that and do the right thing, as a wrestling fan. So, a mess. Match was a mess. Mean Gene interviews the Mamalukes. And Disco Inferno was, an willing participant with this team of Big Vito and Johnny the Bull. They tried to make people have sympathy for Disco Inferno. I don't know why. Disco Inferno was fucking awful. And they took on the Harris Brothers. Look, the Harris Brothers are pieces of shit, and just read up on them or whatever. They got certain tattoos of certain hate groups that should not be allowed in civilized society. That much I'll say. It's pretty fucking shitty. I don't understand why this match really happened. I don't understand why it got as much time as it did. The Harris Brothers could never really fucking work. They were big brawlers. Vito and Johnny the Bolt actually were pretty good workers. Vito especially, he got a ridiculous gimmick in WWE, but him and Johnny the Bull actually could have been a good team, and it's just this was given, they really got absolutely nothing. And we got in a few shots, and then they got the shit beat out of them for a while. The crowd was distracted by something else. I don't have a goddamn clue. I don't know if there was a fight in the crowd, or they were like, hey, we're just going to watch this on the screen instead of watching it on, in the ring that's literally right in front of us. Disco, who doesn't want to be a part of this Italian team, shoves Big Vito, off, thinking he's going to cause him to lose. Nope, he goes in one of the Harris brothers, Ron or Don. I don't really give a shit. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so Disco Inferno helps the team win. He's not happy. All right, cool. This storyline continues. We then get Medusa. By the way, remember when they had Medusa retire? I think at Great American Bash or Bash at the Beach 1997? And then they just brought her back suddenly into matches for absolutely no reason. Like 2 years later. It was really odd. Yeah, this is when they were having Medusa as Cruiserweight Champion, and she was having this feud with Ed Ferrara. And by the way, Spice of the Nitro Girls, almost says the Spice Girls, was also there. I always liked Spice and always, thought she had a good look and everything. Sure, they maybe shouldn't have involved these Nitro Girls in any matches, but at least they were trying to do something different with them because you could only have them dance for so goddamn long. And now we get to where I'm going to rail against Ed Ferrara, and I'm not going to do it as much as I have in other rants and stuff like that. My Times in Wrestling to Piss Me Off series, a lot of people remember that. I have ranted about Ed Ferrara impersonating JR as the Oklahoma character enough already. I will say once again, Ed Ferrara is a goddamn piece of shit, never belonged in wrestling, was an embarrassment to wrestling. And I don't know if he ever did apologize to JR. I know that as much shit as I give Russo did apologize to JR on JR's podcast for doing that and feeling bad about it. He may have been, they both may have been burned by WWE and wanted to, just lash out or get their frustrations out, whatever. I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. But Russo at least apologized to JR. So I will give him that much credit. Ed Ferrara, no goddamn credit to Ed Ferrara, who was a fucking embarrassment to wrestling. Fucking embarrassment in the ring, on the mic. Definitely not a creative guy at all. He was responsible, him and, a couple others were responsible for the whole Terry Runnels miscarriage angle. Which, right there, if you're going to mock miscarriage... Look, I get that wrestling does tasteless shit all the goddamn time. I make plenty of tasteless jokes on my Twitter. A lot of you guys know that if you follow me there. I'll even make, some questionable comments in my videos, but there are certain lines I won't cross, and yeah, that was really what bothered me there. But Ed Ferrara, goddamn piece of fucking shit, and they gave this guy a championship. They thought it was a good idea to put this fucking joke of a human being. That's what not even just a joke of a wrestler, joke of a human being in a goddamn ring. Just fucking embarrassing. He runs down women saying men are the superior race. Let me tell you right now, if Ed Ferrara was the pinnacle of the male race, the male species deserved to freaking go. And I ain't saying that there aren't women that are pieces of shit, but for fuck's sake, good God. It gave me Black Christmas in 2019 flashbacks. If you saw that review, you know I hated that whole men bad, women good, women, overpowering, man, that kind of stuff. I hated that kind of stuff. You get to beat you over the head with it. So anyway, this match was abysmal. It was absolutely fucking abysmal. You had that Asia woman come out. It was Asia with a Y, like China. Do you get it? Do you get the subtlety? Are they hitting you over the head enough with it? She attacks him. There was a lot of teases with all barbecue sauce because JR had barbecue sauce, and Oklahoma gets the roll up for the win. And then I can't remember if he was stripped of the Cruiserweight Championship like the next night or if he was beat for it. I really don't remember. Medusa as Cruiserweight Champion a few years ago, a few years before this, might have made sense. At this point, she was more broken down and not as invested in wrestling. She was doing monster truck stuff and stuff like that. Having a woman be a Cruiserweight Champion isn't the worst thing in the world. They did it with Jacqueline a few years later in WWE. This was awful. Well, at least, all the women poured barbecue sauce on him and humiliated the dumb fuck Ed Ferrara like he is. And boy, this turned into almost a 3-minute rant about Ed Ferrara. It's a new record for me. Seriously, at least he got embarrassed. And I'm actually ashamed that he was ever allowed in wrestling. Ever. I will never claim to be perfect, but for fuck's sake, as a fan, he was embarrassing. Goddamn embarrassing. Then we get a Brian Knobbs promo. It's talking about the hardcore match they're going to have a bit later. Oh, wait, they're going to have it right now. It's Brian Knobbs as a hardcore champion versus Norman Smiley versus Fit Finlay versus Ming. Ming is in a hardcore match. Everybody run, keep running, and when you get to the edge of the earth, even though the earth isn't flat, keep fucking running. Eventually you'll run back into Ming. He will Tongan death grip you, and then it will all be over. Look, Fit Finlay had actually had that leg injury where he had come back from it. It was like the one that got, I forget exactly what happened. I can't remember if it was a table spot or something, but I know he got his leg sliced open and he was took some time off. He obviously got surgery and everything, but it led to pretty much, the conclusion of his career for a time being. He trained a lot of women in WWE and then got back into wrestling for a bit and had a bit of a career resurgence. I've always had respect for Fit Finlay. Brian Knobbs, I never really cared for the Nasty Boys. I never thought they were all that good. Norman Smiley, I don't know why they made him a screaming guy. Ming, I can't say anything bad about Ming. I can't. I could, but I don't want to die. But also, Ming's just legit tough. It was sloppy. The match was sloppy. The badly timed spots, all that. Norman Smiley brought in a riot shield, tried to attack Brian Knobbs with it. It was like poking him with it. And it's like, oh, wait, okay, he's down. I'm going to get the baton and I'm going to hit him with it. Jumps off the ropes and then Brian Knobbs hits him with the riot shield. 1, 2, 3. Excuse me. Brian Knobbs retains. Hooray! This match is over. This match went 6 minutes and it felt like it went about twice that. We then get Kidman versus Saturn. Bunkhouse Brawl. Well, it was better than the Malenko match, mainly because it got to go about 5 times as long and went almost 12 minutes. Tables. There were some good agility spots. There was a table spot at one point where the table was too close to the apron, by the way, and Saturn threw, did like an belly to belly overhead suplex, and Kidman went through the table. But the problem is his head grazed the apron. Not even making a hardest part of the ring comment, even though it just did. It legit looked like it hurt. That looked very, very painful. And then soon after, X Factor or K Factor 4-3. So Kidman advances, and he has to win the next match. And then we get Stevie Ray talking to people in the ghetto and stuff like that, saying, hey, this is where we grew up, Booker T. You forgot who you were, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Booker T cuts promo saying, no, I didn't forget who I was. I didn't want to be around you anymore. You forgot who you were. Okay, it's a pissing contest between 2 legit brothers. Booker T versus Stevie Ray, Midnight. Very, very tall, statuesque woman. Had to be a bodybuilder of some kind because she just had that, statuesque look. Anyway, it wasn't good. It was not a good match. We didn't want to see these brothers face off. We wanted to see them team up. They tried, but they couldn't make this feud interesting. Oh, and then Ahmed Johnson showed up as Big T and botched his own goddamn finish, the Pearl River Plunge, which was hilarious because Ahmed Johnson was a goddamn joke. He was somebody that, looking at 14, 15 years old, I thought he was fucking great. I didn't understand what the fuck he said on promos, but my God, okay, it's like as an early teenager, I'm thinking, fucking hell, this guy's great. This guy's got everything. I didn't really know enough about wrestling, evidently, even though Bret Hart was my favorite wrestler of all time, even at that time. But, oh boy, He botches his he cuts a promo that makes absolutely no goddamn sense. He refers to Midnight as a piece of fish. Good job there. Not objectifying women at all. Boy, the Attitude Era objectified women a whole lot. Not that this era is necessarily done better in some aspects, but, well, anyway, I digress. Okay, yeah, it was bad. It was botchy and everything. Just wasn't good. Mean Gene interviews Sid. Sid said stuff about, putting friendship with Benoit out the window and winning the title tonight. Arn Anderson is the referee for that match, by the way. Arn Anderson and Sid in the same ring after that scissoring incident back in 1993. Scissor incident. I said that wrong, even though I intentionally said it that way to plant that thought in your head. Have fun unseeing that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, by the way, Arn Anderson, Sid Vicious, 1993 WCW Scissors. Just Google it. You'll find out what I mean. Kind of. Then we get Tank Abbott versus Jerry Flynn. You could win the match by knockout, by submission, by whatever. It was terrible. Why did they push Tank Abbott? I don't care how legit he was in cage fighting, and I don't care if Jerry Flynn was actually legit as a black belt of anything, whatever martial arts. It was stupid. This was a stupid goddamn match. Tank wins in like a minute and a half. Pointless. Fucking pointless. But Bagwell versus DDP, last man standing match. It was all because Kimberly may have slept around. I think if I remember right, Kimberly and DDP would separate later this year. I just remember that being recounted in some interviews and stuff like that. I mean, they still seem like they're friends, and that's great. They just weren't right for each other after a while, and they found that out, and that's fantastic. Only more couples realize that instead of staying together and just being toxic. By the way, Marriage Story. If you haven't seen that movie, check that out. So this movie, it might as well have felt like a movie because it was all over a woman, like a woman possibly sleeping around and everything. But it wasn't bad. The thing is Buff and DDP didn't really have the best chemistry. They did go into the crowd. They did get to the WCW.com thing with some guy and then Mark Madden also there. And they ripped off the computer monitors and tried to throw them at each other, and then, both fell down and stuff like that. Thankfully, they didn't land on their heads. Hey, they scared Mark Madden and actually had him get up and do something like get the fuck off of a pay-per-view broadcast because he never belonged in wrestling either because he was a goddamn joke. Seriously, there's being a heel comment. If you think that Corey Graves is a terrible heel commentator, and I kind of do, whether he's being fed lines or not, now you ain't seen nothing yet. Mark Madden's easily the worst heel commentator of all time. Never put anybody over, always put himself over. Even Don Callis wasn't that bad, even at his worst and most annoying. So, yeah, that happened. There was a lot, table bump where Buff literally, I think, jumped like 3 feet off of a partition through a table, which, could hurt. Falling any distance could hurt. Lots of 10 count attempts, and then suddenly Buff Bagwell pulls out a police baton and then hits DDP a lot with it. Kimberly's coming down to the ring, but DDP can't get back to his feet before 10. Buff Bagwell wins. Kimberly distracts Buff Bagwell, seemingly, and then DDP attacks him, and then lays him out, and then DDP and Kimberly leave. She doesn't look happy with either. Okay, I watched Nitro and Thunder, by the way, at this time still. I taped it and then would watch it later, and, as opposed to Raw or SmackDown, which I would just watch live. This was fucking rotten. WCW is so rotten by this point, no matter how good the talent was. No matter how good and how hard some of these talents tried. Wow, that sounded really bad. Kidman versus a mystery opponent. Shane Douglas comes out and cuts a promo that seemingly takes forever, possibly because he was, at the time, intoxicated. I know he has cleaned up his life since, but boy, if he wasn't, I don't know what happened. I don't know if he hadn't slept in a while or what, because he was groggy, slurring. And he's a hell of a talker. That's one thing about Shane Douglas. Hell of a goddamn talker, and this just wasn't working. So it's a cage heat match. It's a cage match, essentially, is what it is. And Douglas says, you will face the wall. Okay. This whole Revolution gimmick or stable that Douglas, Saturn, Benoit, and Malenko were part of. I think even Guerrero was part of it. Wasn't Guerrero part of it? And Guerrero wasn't even on this pay-per-view. I don't even remember why exactly, but boy, this match wasn't much of anything. Kidman got in a few shots, but the wall would eventually get a chokeslam 1, 2, 3. So Kidman's dreams of being U.S. champion were crushed. And then he started feuding with Hogan a couple months later. No, really, it was weird. We then get Terry Funk versus Kevin Nash. And if Terry Funk wins, the NWO disbands, even though the NWO was pretty much only 3 people at that point. And if Nash wins, he becomes the WCW commissioner. Well, guess what happened? A lot of sloppiness because Terry Funk was 54 years old and Nash, unfortunately, his wheels were bad. He did address that recently on Twitter where one of his knees was so freaking bad that he actually had to get, completely like it replaced and everything. He had to do a whole bunch of stuff to get his body right, get his hips right and everything. So credit to him. He is in a lot better shape. That is great. And at this time, this match was what it was. I mean, you weren't going to get much out of it. You got chair shots. Terry Funk was busted open. Jackknife through the table. Two announcers got lost. Tony Schiavone was the only one talking. This was really bad. Jackknife on the two chairs. Nash wins. I mean, Funk got in a few shots, but oh well. Nash is a new commissioner. Then Arn Anderson's talking backstage, talking about Nash as commissioner. Everything is changing, at midnight tonight. How right he would end up being, considering Benoit, Saturn, Guerrero, and Malenko would be leaving very soon after this. And talked the world title match, refereeing this. The one good match, the one really good match out of this is the second best Sid match that I've seen, at least in the U.S. Chris Benoit versus Sid Vicious, Arn Anderson, special guest referee, WCW world title match. Much like when I reviewed ECW Guilty as Charged 2000, that had Spike and Mike Awesome, or Spike Dudley and Mike Awesome, David Goliath match, so to speak. Yeah, that was much more of a squash and everything. This was more competitive, but this was terrific. This was really, really terrific. This was really good stuff. That was more just witnessing a, smaller guy getting destroyed. Yes, Benoit got destroyed quite a bit, but he was always in it because Sid, besides the match that he had with Shawn Michaels at Madison Square Garden, Survivor Series 96, this is the best Sid match that I've seen. Honestly. Again, at least in the U.S. I never saw anything, if he did anything in Japan or anything in the UK, it's that kind of stuff, but really just goddamn terrific stuff. Everything worked well. Sid was tossing Benoit around a lot. Benoit was like using his guts and determination to come down, trying to break down Sid's legs, not like it Greed or WCW Sin a year later, the leg break. Oh dear. But this was a pretty goddamn good match. Benoit eventually wins. There is a bunch of talents out on, at the entranceway to witness what's going to happen here. And Benoit gets crossface on, and Sid's foot's under the rope, but, Benoit gets the world title. And then would relinquish the world title, and then Sid would win the world championship a little bit later. I think would win it the next night or a week after that. Because Benoit was like, oh, I got the world title. Cool, I'm going to go to WWE because I don't want to be here anymore because he didn't trust Kevin Sullivan, and I don't know why anybody would, at least as a booker. This pay-per-view was shit. I mean, besides that match, this pay-per-view was goddamn shit. They had an interview with Benoit where he talked about the future of WCW that he wouldn't be a part of because, again, he would go to WWE, and I can't blame him. So, man, I mean, it was what it was. It was a terrible pay-per-view. It was a mess. The one bright spot was that main event. Even then, that was not necessarily the greatest thing, but fucking hell, compared to the rest of the pay-per-view, it felt absolutely, captivating. It was absolutely wonderful. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. It was a terrible pay-per-view. Agree, disagree with what I said. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin, and I'll see you soon.